Will, today we have a pre-seed deck. I can say and celebrate that they have just signed their first client
Hey.
and they raised 30K friends and family. So just a small check to get going.
Yep, love
They're
it.
seeking to raise 800K and have sent us their pitch deck, and we're going to help them with their fundraise. That's what we have going on today. Want to appreciate everybody who is joining us from the audience and across the interwebs. If you're watching this on YouTube, the YouTube thing, social media stuff, like, comment, subscribe, share it with a friend, helps us out. Will, we're going to warm up with a question here that I get commonly, and it's just to get the discussion going. But I had a founder tell me after I advised them and said, hey, how about you focus on getting traction while we help you with your fundraise? Very
Always a good.
important.
Yep,
Yep.
yep.
And they said, I have to argue that I see so many startups raise without any revenue, any traction whatsoever. Will, what's our response to that?
That doesn't mean you should do it.
Yeah.
That's like saying, I don't want to date around because I've met a bunch of people who've met their high school sweetheart in high school, and so I'm just going to marry the first person I see. It's like you can try to do that, doesn't mean it's going to work, right? Like just being able to say, hey, other people did it. I think part of the misconception of how funding works is that it's works the same for everybody, like a mortgage application. Like if I just hit this FICO score and I just have this amount of revenue or income, that'll get approved. And it's every single one of these situations is completely different. They're all a series of one-offs. There are some commonalities, but here's a great way to put it. I have had parallel fundraisers going on for my own companies. Okay. So at one point in the same day, I was fundraising for one of my companies that I owned and another one. So get this is the best part. Going to the same VC, saying, here's company A. That's the
Okay.
dumbest thing I've ever heard. No one will fund that. You're an idiot. Okay. Okay. Hours later, totally different team coming with company B. Genius. Smartest thing we've ever seen. Shut up and take my money. Right. Come on, man. I'm telling you, that was a wild experience. Like having one company just get panned by everybody, while at the same time having another company just people jumping out of their seats to write checks. What I want to point out here is that just because some other company did something, that means nothing. That means nothing for your fundraise. There are some commonalities, but everyone's unique. So I've never heard of somebody saying, "Let's not get traction."
Yes. And a lot of people don't understand that. There are frothy environments, times have changed, and you think of the number of startups seeking funding, and then the number you hear of that raise without any revenue. That's the first thing. Second, let's acknowledge, well, that today I do see AI companies raising pre-revenue at some of the most ridiculous valuations, but it's just a crazy time for
Yeah.
AI. And if you think that just because you see one company do it, that is a blanket principle across all of the startups, I think founders are going to be in a world of pain.
All right, what did we get into today, Ed?
We are going to be using our tool here, Will, that we have. It's called the Investor Matching Tool. Raise capital 10x faster, and it will literally analyze your pitch deck or the inputs, match you with the investors, basically pair you up and automate your outreach to investors for those of you who need to do cold outreach, which is part of your toolkit. And right now, Will, I have uploaded the deck here, and we're going to see investors that get to take a look at this, all right, that we want to sort of target. Now, for everyone reading or looking at this out there, joining us, you can try this for free. Just go to our website, startups.com, go to Investor Match, and here I'm going to click this button, Will. While it's working its magic, Will, what thoughts or what would you like to share for everyone thinking about using this tool?
I'm going to do a bunch of like PSA, public service announcements. Number one, whether you use our tool or not, what we're about to show you is how you should go and reach out to investors. So like, don't think that this is just like some sales pitch for the tool. We're using the tool because this is like the best way to do this. But at the same time, understanding how we're positioning the deck, understanding how we're selecting investors, understanding how we're composing an email. You can do all this without our tool. It's easier with the tool, but either way, you should use these same best practices. The other thing that I'm going to say is that what just happened here, because a lot of people won't understand literally what Ed just did. You have two ways that you can kick off the tool. First way is you can just tell us how much you're raising and some of the industries or one of the industries that you're raising in. And we could do a pretty good match of all the investors that are out there. The other option, which I just think is cool, is you could take your pitch deck, business plan, anything that has enough information about your business, you can upload it. And our AI, who's just been through this a million times, will actually go through, review the deck, figure all this stuff out for you, and present the best possible investors. The other thing that just happened, Ed, if you can jump back to that investor list, here's how it works. We take all of the conditions that we can find about your fundraise, the stage, the amount, the location, the industries, you name it. And we take a database of our investors that we constantly update. And we say, of all the investors that we have, which investors have a 0 to 100% confidence that this is the right investor. Now, there's a couple things that kind of happen when you're out there looking for investors. And Ed, back me up on this. Most people, when they go out looking for investors, they get all frustrated because like nobody's responding to me, or they'll say nobody's funding me. But then we look at who they're pitching, who they're reaching out to. Exactly. And it's all people that would have never responded. Like you're literally talking to all the wrong people, which is why you're not getting a response. The problem is you don't know that you're talking to the wrong people because you've probably never done this before, like most people, right? You're like, oh, I want to talk to Sequoia, venture capital. And it's like, yeah, Sequoia doesn't invest in your industry and they certainly don't invest at your stage. So you shouldn't be talking to them. Or you message them and you're like, hey, I want to talk to the managing partner because that's who makes decisions. That managing partner is never going to respond to your email. It's literally never going to happen. So my point here is what we're doing is we're basically saying, based on your raise, the conditions of your raise, these are all the people that you should be talking to, starting with the most likely candidate, and the AI even explains why, down to the least. So just want to give a little backstory as to what just happened there.
That's a perfect explanation. Well, let me bring up another question that gets brought up quite often. I've had people tell me, why are you doing cold outreach? That is the most ineffective way to reach to investors. And then usually these armchair quarterbacks or these armchair founders that are, quote, experts, give me a whole list of, you need to find someone with inside connections and network yourself with VCs and et cetera, et cetera. And Will, I just explained, well, not every founder has the ability to do that. And cold outreach does work, Will. You've experienced this. I've experienced this. What do you think?
Well, let's put it in a few different contexts. No one's saying email investors cold at the expense of anything else. That makes no sense, right? We're not saying just do one thing. That makes no sense at all. If you have warm introductions, by all means, pursue the warm introductions. A couple interesting points. Your warm introductions are based on who's most likely to fund you. So if I'm looking to raise and I call you and said, hey, dude, I'd love some warm introductions. Pause right there. What's the probability that Ed's list of investors that he's going to make warm introductions to are exactly my stage, are exactly my industry, or have a preference for that partner to be what I'm trying to do? Very low, by the way. Okay. So saying I can get warm introductions, it also assumes that the people that I know that can give me warm introductions, if I know anyone, are the right introductions. So if nothing else, when you do this search and the top names come by, now you know who you want warm introductions to. That's pretty helpful information.
That's
right?
A really good point. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, for example, Ed, you and I have significant Rolodexes in the investor community.
For sure.
But if you come to me with a certain type of deal, again, my connections don't have that stage, that preference. A lot of times people say, well, I'm raising money out of the UK, let's say. And I'm like, well, yeah, most people in my network are only investing in the US. Yep. So it could be all these conditions. If you have a warm connection to somebody that's exactly who you should be talking to, take it. No one would say don't take it. Of course, take it, right? But also, you got to remember, even if that goes beautifully, you still have to find like 5 other investors, right? There's no such thing where you meet one investor like Shark Tank and it's Mark Cuban that gives you all your money. On average, per round, you're going to have 5 to 15 unique investors. So if you're raising 800K right now, you don't need to find one investor with one intro. You need to find 5 to 15 investors. So it's cool that Ed or Will can make an intro, but you still have to make 4 more anyway. So basically be able to expand your pool is your goal. Take every opportunity you can. This is just one of them.
Some investors say to me, Ed, I don't accept any cold outreach. I only do it by warm referral. I go, great. If that works for you, congratulations. However, founders out there are firms sitting on literally like $50 million of dry powder. And there's no way that they can get all their deal flow just from personal intros. That's why they have websites. That's why they go to events. That's why they use social media, because they want deal flow to come in because it's so competitive. And it's all based on, can you source the right deal? And if you get out there and you just happen to be like Y Combinator, it's all cold outreach to Y Combinator in terms of you have an equal shot to apply. That's where they find those diamonds in the rough. They look through the long tail. And let me tell you, investors want to see your deal, especially if you've got a good one. Don't shy away. Don't listen to noise. Just get right in there and put in the work. That's all we have to say.
One last comment, because I think this is all useful information to anybody that's raising. Remember, the different folks that work within an investor, they range from an analyst, which is like your front lines, a kid that just graduated college 5 seconds ago, whose job it is to source deals. They absolutely want to hear from you. Okay. Then there's the managing partner. This person's been around for 20 years. He or she doesn't have to like source deals for cold. Why? Because they already have a team of people like the analysts who bring that stuff up to them. So if you're emailing that managing partner, yes, they don't accept a cold and they're not going to listen to you. But if you know to manage the associate, who's the person whose job it is to source deals, they're going to listen to your stuff all day long. Part of what this system does, and again, I'm not just like pumping up the system, it's here for a reason, is we say, look, if you're going to contact this firm, this is the best person to contact, not that person. That person will never respond to your emails. This person will. So a lot of that has to do with how we weight it.
Right. And founders out there, listen, you're not expected to know all this stuff. If you're sitting there going, wow, this is totally new information, that's what we're here for. We've been around. Will, you're a 9-time founder, 5 exits. I've been 7-time founder, 2 exits. Right. We've been around and we understand. And so we want to partner with all of you out there. No dumb questions. Let's start and look at this deck super quick, Will. As I said, raising 800K. Scroll to the founders' credit. I always love the founders that put in the work to their pitch deck. We go back and forth. Obviously, always a moving target, work in progress. But so far, here's what we got. Scroll, professional networking app for Gen Z with an AI resume fraud detector. Right away, what's your first impression?
Those are 2 different companies.
Yes.
No, and look, I get the connection. I do. This is going to come up. And, I always say from the jump when we get into these, to the founder and other founders that have provided these decks before, these criticisms that you're hearing, don't take this like we're attacking your deck. Take it. You have a kick-ass idea. Our job is to make sure you get funded. So, we're in the business of saying, let's keep this thing as focused as possible. This isn't a criticism of you or your business. It's basically an optimization of the deck. So please take it at that face value. And the second thing I'll say is props to you for being brave enough to share your stuff to help all these other people. It's always appreciated. And you're about to help a ton of people, whether you realize it or not. So thank you.
You're here. And if you're out there and you want your pitch deck reviewed and also us to help you with your fundraise, take a look at your investors, just let us know, contact us. More than happy to help.
Yep.
But Will, back to your comment. Not only are these 2 different businesses, they're 2 different wildly just competitive businesses. And so an investor's immediately going to think, how do we actually do both at the same time? But I think we streamline it from here.
Yep.
Let's take a look at the problem. Resume fraud costs small business, small and medium enterprises and startups $300 billion annually worldwide due to lack of HR resources and weaker verification infrastructure to thoroughly verify candidates, resulting in bad hires.
True, but I feel like it's not hitting the nail on the head enough. And by the way, these are small things. Again, we're trying to optimize the deck. We're not criticizing the deck. We want to make sure the deck is as tight as possible. I might say that SMEs and startups are the same thing. I would argue that the variance there, it's a world we live in, is probably so small it's not worth separating them unless there was some absolutely meaningful difference in the 2. Good. And I say this to everybody listening. This isn't just to these founders. You want to keep this statement as simple as possible. Wherever you can condense information, condense information. But let me pause by saying, you said who it was, right? The SMEs and startups, and you say how much it cost right off the jump. Nailed it. Right. Nailed it. I know exactly who you're focused on. I know exactly how much money is on the table. That's the best possible way to open up. Every deck should open up like that. The second part I get a little anxious on, Ed, due to lack of HR resources. Dude, that could mean anything, right? I understand we've got an asterisk there and we're saying it's dedicated personnel and systems, but it's a really amorphous pain point, okay? And then weaker verification infrastructure. That could mean a hell of a lot of things. But neither of those things are what costs them. The fact that they don't have those things leads to something like by making those bad hires where the money comes in, okay? In other words, when I make a bad hire, what actually happens, what is my cost of a bad hire? So for example, Ed, if I were to say resume fraud generates $300 billion in bad hires because employers cannot properly verify education, work experience, and something else, resulting in, you could either say the loss or some other bigger problem. I don't know that not having the infrastructure is the problem. as much as what part of the resume fraud is the problem. Does that make sense, Ed?
It totally makes sense. And I think we've oversimplified because I know the founder, he had told me there are stats out there that on average, people only spend some ridiculous like 30 minutes on a resume or some even 4 minutes on a resume before it gets passed. Like there are so many reasons this problem exists. And if you added a little more detail, I think that would help. Here's the other thing, Will. I also wonder, is it resume fraud or just resume embellishment? Does fraud completely cover, let's say you just kind of, embellish just a little bit? I'm a
Yeah,
little confused there as well.
that's what I'm trying to get at. This is one of those cases, and folks following along right now, please pay close attention to this. The founder has an exact, clear idea in their mind of what resume fraud means, but they forgot to tell the audience.
Right.
They forgot to tell the audience what resume fraud actually is. And this happens all the time. It happens when founders know their product because they know it so intrinsically. They forget to embellish and communicate. And that is a huge miss on the problem statement because you want there to be no question whatsoever that the audience, the investor, knows exactly what this problem is, what resume fraud is.
All in all, Will, we at least have enough to move forward just a little bit in terms of, okay, we need to understand the problem a little more, really help the investor understand it by clarifying it. But let's take a look at the solution. Scroll uses AI to detect fake or exaggerated resumes. There's the explanation.
Okay.
Instantly helping these SMEs cut hiring time from 44 days to 15 days, saves up to $50,000 per bad hire.
I love it. But you never told me in the previous problem that cutting hiring time was the problem.
Exactly.
Or that you were trying to save 50K per hire. So you can't solve that problem. You either have to say that hiring time is the problem of fake resumes, or that 50K is how much it's costing companies, or you're not allowed to say that that's what you solve. Now, when I say not allowed to save, I'm not literally meaning that. I'm saying the problem statement and the solution statement have to be totally connected. Whatever we said, if we're saying the solution's hiring time, the problem is hiring time. Let's say that fake resumes increase hiring time to an average of 44 days. And cost companies up to $50,000 in bad hires. We cut that time to 15 days and save them $50,000 per bad hire.
That makes so much sense to me just by you saying it. If we went back to the problem one more time, fake and exaggerated resumes increase hiring time on average of 44 days plus $50,000 per bad hire because there's nothing to truly verify what's going on out there. We use AI to verify, cutting hiring time down to 15 days, and you can save that 50K per bad hire, totally eliminating the cost per bad hire. Done.
Yeah, I still think there's a lot missing here. Again, and I want to say, this is the process of building a pitch deck.
Right on.
A lot of people, when they hand us their pitch deck, they look at it like they're handing their professor their term paper, right? And you get like a pass-fail grade on it or whatever, right? That's not how this process works. The pitch deck process is as if you were going to hand in your term paper 150 times, right? Until it was exactly what you wanted. So when we look at this, this is a work in progress. This is raw clay that we're going to keep on shaping and keep on making all these tiny edits to until it's exactly what we want to say. So founders, I know the founders that we review are watching this stuff. That's okay. We'll just use this raw clay. And for those of you that are live in the session today, thanks for being here. And all of those that are listening in the future, don't try to nail your pitch deck one time. I keep saying, get it 1% better over and over and over until it's exactly what you want.
I see you founders out there. I think some of you founders think I'm purposely trying to torture you because I'm trying to get you to nail your problem solution. And when I say, all right, I appreciate you did your whole pitch deck, let's just talk about the problem statement.
Yeah.
I'm doing it because the problem, solution, and then eventually your market size slide are the most important parts of your deck. You nail that. Everything else is academic. And that's what investors look for. On top of which, those are you founders who keep coming back to me. Here's my next version. What do you think about this? Trust me, you are not bothering me.
You're right. Yeah.
We are doing what we set out to do. I'm doing my job. You're doing yours. So appreciate all of you out there. Will, if we take this, I want to point something else out here. Nowhere in the problem or the solution did we mention a social network for Gen Z, everyone.
That's why we focus on the problem and the solution first, because they are essentially the North Star for the rest of the deck. Whatever we said the problem is, we're going to spend every other slide specifically focused on how everything we do, from how we position ourselves competitively to what our team strengths are around solving that particular problem. So until we narrow down exactly what the problem is, the rest of the deck actually doesn't make sense yet. So we always start there.
Okay, Will, you were going to say, and I want to make sure that we get the information to this founder that help. You were saying there were just a few other things that you'd love to see,
What is a fake or exaggerated resume? Like
right?
specifically, what within it tends to make it fake or exaggerated? Obviously, it's going to be education, work experience, etc. But tell me, you're assuming that I know what you know, and that's always a mistake.
Will, I'm acknowledging that we're both old and our
Yeah.
eyesight's going. I didn't know, but they do this in this really tiny text down here. They talk
No,
about employee periods, job descriptions, etc.
no, hold on, hold on. No, I saw that. The point is, it's not in the solution statement.
Right.
You don't get to you don't get to have asterisks. Here's everything I meant to say. It has to be focused directly in the solution statement. It has to be focused directly in the problem statement. Also, no one ever uses asterisks in pitch decks.
Listen, and it's the same reason we say you are not going to be perched on the investor's shoulder, leaving a narrative. And the problem is, Will, founders create their pitch decks, and that narrative is firing in the back of their heads, and they just immediately think it's baked in the subtext of their pitch deck, and they don't read it for how it's going to come across to the investor. And we say you are not going to be in their heads. You're not going to be given the play-by-play, and that's what's something that all of you should consider. Let's move on. Market. Scroll targets early stage SMEs and startups newly created within 2 years, which expect to employ staff. The TAM, 9.2 million, $3,999 a year. There's your TAM, your SAM. APAC, I don't know what that is. SOM, they're going to focus on Korea. All right, bit of a mess. Well, how do we fix this?
There are a couple things that I always try to focus on here, and the biggest thing is, what market are you starting with and why? Why that market? So in other words, we're starting in I believe Korea. Cool. Why? Like I have no indication as to why. Is that a more viable market? Or are there more SMEs and startups? Does it happen to be your backyard? Like what is it? And what we're looking for in that initial market, and you have to communicate this on this slide. What is it about that initial market that those people are chomping at the bit in order to buy our product? We are looking for, and I always say this, we're looking for the people that are going to be standing in line like they're waiting for the next iPhone, dying to buy the product. Show me that market first. Here's why. I'm going to give you a small amount of money, let's say $800,000 in this case. I need to know that if that money is being spent on the highest probable candidate to buy this product and they still don't buy, then spending more money on more people that want it less is not going to help us, right? On the other hand, if I give you 800K and you give it to the people that are standing in line to buy your product and they just eat it up, at least then I know where I can take it next. Now, I know in this case, we've got that beachhead market of Andy's direct clients. Do you know who Andy's direct clients are, Ed?
He's in Korea, and he has a Korean NGO as his first client, if that gives you a little more information.
Okay. But you'd have to have that information in order to understand this slide.
Right.
And I know later in the deck they make some other references. I've scanned the deck before, but I feel like I would want to be highly specific about why is it that those clients, and that's 200K, that's not really a market. That's kind of like what you already have. I'd probably want to make a slightly bigger market, but all the same. I do like the fact that they cited a beachhead, by the way. What I'm trying to say is I need a little bit more detail as to specifically why these clients fit the profile, not just because Andy knows them, that actually does help, but why they fit the profile, the archetype of exactly who we're going after. I would say Andy already has a direct network of exactly the clients that we work with that tend to have 2 to 50 people and are under $10 million of revenue. Okay, cool. Now I understand the correlation.
You can explain just a little bit, and I'm a TAM SAM SOM guy, and we kind of got a little bit of hybrid, but if you just explain a little better, there are 9.2 million organizations that fit into our target, and we're going to be focusing on Korea because, like Will said, that's my beachhead, it's my backyard, it's our lowest lying fruit. Then you'd be fine and just make this calculation. Now, here's the other thing, Will. We have a SOM here, and this is what stood out for me, 4.0 million. So we went from 36.8 billion to 24.0 billion to 4 million. And so everyone out there, you have to be careful in terms of what you're communicating, because remember, the investors need to know that your market is big enough for you to go unicorn. All right.
Yep.
And if an investor goes, okay, yeah, you're focusing, you're in Korea, here are the reasons why you're going to make 4.4 million in Korea, and those are your clients, that's going to cause some eyebrows to raise. So you just want to make sure that you're explaining that this is a market, not what I project that I'm going to be making.
Yep, absolutely. That goes in your projections, not in the size of the market.
Let's continue. How it works. Once hiring manager posts a job, step 1, scroll scans beyond basic qualification. Step 2, AI match or AI automatically matches. And then step 3, we have fraud detection.
Hiring manager posted a job. Okay, got it. Scroll scans beyond. Okay, so I thought scroll was fraud detection. Now it's job posting.
Right. Once hiring manager, I guess, is posting a job. This is a good thing. I don't think they're posting a job to scroll.
It says it matches it with suitable candidates. But by the way, guys, I really want you to understand. This is Ed and I having a live diagnosis of how we just understood what you wrote. And if you allow me just a quick pause here, an aside.
Yes.
Ed and I do this for a living. We review decks, we look through a ton of stuff. So and we're both fairly educated guys in this process. When you see that we can't get it, understand that that's also a bit of a proxy for how other investors will digest it too, only with far less interest in taking the time to unpack what they don't understand. Most investors, when they look at stuff they don't understand, are like, screw it, I'll just move on to a deck that I do understand. They're not sitting there pondering everything you got wrong and giving you the benefit of the doubt of trying to figure out your mistakes for you. That's what we do ahead of time before you send out the deck. So Ed, if you were to jump back to that slide, this is a case where the founder, again, they understand how the product works. But when they go to communicate it, they forget that we haven't explained or given a context for why they'd be posting a job, right? You told me we were reviewing resumes. Now you're saying we're posting a job. Those are different things, okay? The AI match automatically matches with suitable candidates. Wait, why are they matching with suitable candidates? You said that we're doing fraud detection, right? Now, okay, remember, now we're introducing stuff that we never said was a problem or a solution, but we're saying it's in the how it works. Then they tap on a candidate, expanding their skills and validity score. Okay, that makes sense. But hold on a sec. Where did this other stuff come from? Here's why. The founder's like, oh, yeah, you don't understand the product. The product allows you to both be this social network, this is me guessing, as well as, in addition, having the fraud detection within our social network. It's like, cool. You realize up until now I had no idea that other part existed? This is where it gets dangerous. And for all founders that are out there listening right now, and the folks that are going to listen in the future, put your deck in front of people who've never seen it before. Force them to explain with clean eyes what they see. I guarantee it won't be anything like you expect. And here's the trick, and this is the hardest part for the founders of this business or anybody we review the deck. You're not allowed to talk. You're not notice that the founders aren't here, right? The founders aren't the third screen here defending what they're doing, which, by the way, is brutally hard to be the founder and watch this. You have to be able to show this to other people, ideally founders, because they kind of get it at a high level, and say, now tell me what you think this slide says. And you're not allowed to cajole them or whatever. You'd be surprised the answers you get.
It's just like with MVPs, everyone. I see people in the audience are building MVPs. You sit down and you don't go, here, let me walk you through it. Push this green button and do this and see how it works. Ha, ha, ha. It's here, take a look at it, and you sit beside them, just like Will said, say nothing and see what happens. And then also ask them what they're thinking. What do they want to know? How are they experiencing it? You're going to learn so much. And so, Will, you're absolutely right. Here's the crazy part, Will. This startup already has a client. So we know that they've got something working that actually works and sells, and it makes sense to the customer and to the founder, but it's not going to make sense to the investor because it's not being communicated properly. And you don't want to be in that situation. Well, all right, let's keep going. A few more slides. I want to get to one. We're going to answer the question about traction just in a moment. But business model, we offer 2 tiers of subscription for companies and free for job seekers. So I guess it is. You're posting to this. Now I'm extra confused. Thanks for pointing that out. But we got membership. So we've got $999 membership plus, and then job seekers is free.
Honestly, I don't have any problem with this. I think if I had a better handle on what the business was as we were going through it, I would be able to do a better job of saying, oh yeah, this makes sense in how we do it. But again, we got job postings, we got people search. We forgot to tee up what that even is before we got into the business model. So again, I think we're in decent shape here. I think this is fairly well communicated if we had already provided the context. What do you think, Ed?
I totally agree with you. Let me just break this down just as an academic exercise for those of you out there doing a business model slide. Point out, as we teach, stark summary headline sentence, just explaining simply, this is how we're going to make money. And then just a nice clear menu of what's going on with some of the differentiators between each one. You don't have to go into too much detail. It's sparse. It's straightforward. Fundamentally, as far as the structure, Will, you're okay with this?
Yeah, totally.
Let's continue. Go to market. We first focus on Andy's direct clients within the retail industry across Asia Pacific region. Our beachhead is Asia Pacific, direct clients. Then we're going to go to partnerships in Korea, then Southeast Asia, and then global.
This is almost like we covered this in the TAM. And I do like a good GTM slide, so all good there. We also have no idea who Andy is yet or who his direct clients are.
Right.
Remember, this is a bit sequential, so it's hard for us to present this. And I think it's worth noting there are two versions of your pitch deck that folks will have. And I think, again, for folks following along, it's important that you understand this. Many of us, when we build this pitch deck, we build it with the idea that we're in the room giving the pitch. Okay. That's a dangerous condition to be designing around. Here's why. It allows you to basically fill in the gaps for where you missed on your presentation. So, for example, you could be like, well, yeah, but by the time I present this slide, I'll have already given my intro and explained that I have direct clients, et cetera. And yes, it's not on the slide, but I say it in person if you ever get into the meeting. Okay. There are two versions of the slide or of the deck. There's the version that you email ahead of time, and there's the version that you present. Sometimes they're the same. A lot of times they're not. The version we're reviewing is the version you would have sent to investors before you get the meeting. That is your application, so to speak, to even get the investment meeting. And if that deck doesn't stand on its own without you jumping in and filling in the details, you don't get the opportunity to be in front of the investor filling in all the details. So the deck you're building and the deck we're designing for has to stand on its own without anybody else in the room. We say it has to stand naked, which is very difficult.
To be very tactile upfront, by the time I'm done, I have at least a dozen pitch decks plus a master pitch deck that then can be used to customize according to the investor, because sometimes they're more technical, sometimes they're FFAs. You are going to go through so many iterations, and yeah, you'll have multiple versions of this. Don't be afraid. Just go with it. But Will brought up the use case, what I call the screener introduction deck. That's the one that stands on its own, that goes out for cold outreach. But Will, I want to go back to this slide. There are a few things I do like what's going on, but I wish we're just explain a little bit. You're right. Andy's direct clients. So if we knew, let's say like Andy already has like 200 clients that he's been working with for some reason with domain expertise, et cetera. Explain that, right? So you got to,
Right.
do that. And then he say, I'm a member. This is a strategy. I'm a member of the Foreign Enterprise in Korea. It's already got startup members. Explain that. Explain how that's going to get you to clients. And then there's good news here too. Selected participant in Bridge Incubation Program. Explain it. If that's all you did, you said you're going to start off here. This is how we're going to make it. And you just said, these are our future channels and here's why they're going to work. Then we've got a slide that's cooking in the right direction.
Right. Right.
Continuing along. Competition. Scroll offers affordable prices and serves both companies and job seekers. That's sort of a differentiation. And then we got the competitors up along the top, and then, lower costs, job seeker facing tools, etc. on the left-hand side. What do you think?
I don't think you can lean on affordable prices. I think in the job, the recruitment market and prices are all over the map. Saying you serve both companies and job seekers also isn't a strong position. I think the whole point was that you were saying you opened up with resume fraud. You were saying we have this amazing thing that solves a $300 billion problem of resume fraud. And now you're talking about how we compete as a job board. Those two things are totally incompatible.
Right. Well, can I pause you there for a moment?
Yeah.
Here's what I was missing, and it actually got brought up here, got triggered. In the how it works slide, like you said, we are focusing on, let's say we are focusing on resume fraud, embellishments. I want to know at least an introduction of how you're doing that. You say we use the AI in the solution, but I'm still lost because anybody can whitewash an AI solution. So let's say you got some funky algorithm or looks in a data source that never had before, it gets pre-verified. That's the stuff, Will, that you could put as differentiators on your competition.
Yeah, and if you've got amazing resume fraud detection, why do you need to be a job board?
That's my question exactly.
I mean, everybody's already got plenty of resumes that need to be reviewed. Just allow them to upload their resume in the same way we just allowed you to upload a pitch deck. Show me all the factors and let me pay for that. Like, that's directly solving the problem. The job board feels like an unnecessary step. And by the way, we're generally not in the business of trying to tell you how to run your business or what business you should be in. All I'm saying here is these just feel like two totally separate businesses. They kind of don't need to be, because it's not like you got a really cool solution around the resume detector that don't require you to be a job board, but maybe there's something I'm missing.
Well, you bring up a really great point, and I think it's worth founders to hear this because many of them right now are talking to investors and getting feedback. I find that investors like to think that they know what I should be doing as far as the idea is concerned, but really the onus is on me. I'm the domain expert. They've just been looking at it for literally 5 minutes. Unless they have direct experience, let's say they exited out of a specific company or they invested in a specific company and they have that data, I'll listen. But just like everybody, Will said, we're just pontificating. We don't live in this world. So you take what we say with a huge grain of salt, but you do want to listen to us in terms of what investors think as far as de-risking the investment, as far as is it clear? Is it concise? That's the feedback you definitely want to take.
Agreed. Ed, can we jump back into the matching tool for a second, if that's okay? The only reason I ask is because I want to start to see what kind of investors this brought back. Remember, we uploaded the deck to see how that would match with investors, and
Right.
I just as we're running this in parallel, I
Oh,
know we're
perfect.
digging into the deck, but I also want to see what investors got put to this because my thought is if this picked up from the pitch deck that it was job board, that it was a resume, kind of the same category, but I'm very curious as to what we were looking at here.
This is what the system came up with. SYN Ventures could be a great fit for Scroll because they specialize in early stage ventures. Great. Cybersecurity and software, given Scroll's used for AI fraud detection. So that's where it picked it up and did the match. So it definitely, this could be a false positive, Will. Just want to acknowledge that.
Well,
Furthermore, expertise, cybersecurity, talks about cybersecurity quite a bit.
well, they say cybersecurity, but the fraud detection is a massive part of cybersecurity.
True.
I wouldn't write them off, but again, I also think it's interesting where we put in the job board. Let me see some of the other investors. I want to see who else got brought back, and I want to see why. Another fund focused on early stage cybersecurity companies. Again, I think because we're getting in this AI fraud detection, the folks that are in cybersecurity are going to know AI and fraud detection insanely well.
Sure.
However, they may not be consumer facing, right? Vis-a-vis if they're trying to build a job board. One of the things that's interesting here to me is exactly how the job board component of that business is important. Because here's what I'm trying to say. If being a job board isn't important, then all the people that are getting listed are probably who you should be talking to. Conversely, if being a job board is critical, then I might go to more companies that are more like consumer app focused, although it's technically B2B because they're hiring managers. But it feels like, and this is what I was trying to say, it feels like this deck has two companies inside it.
Yes.
And I think that's literally making it hard to say who you should be talking to.
Here's where I'd go with this a little bit. And remember, everyone, we're working on this on the fly. Will and I haven't planned all this out. But, I'd probably go to the filters.
Yeah.
And I would take a look at maybe what does it look like if we looked at, because I know the categories very well because I helped build this thing. We looked at HR. And let's say I went and filtered this. So I just want to match the exact filters. I'm going to show verified. I'm going to apply the filters. And we've got now Notion Capital, AI, FinTech, human resources. And here, this might be a good AI for fraud detection, and HR might be a better match.
And by the way, do you have a location for this? Because this is literally talking about Asia Pac.
Yes, we could. Well, I've set it at global, but I could easily fine tune it for Korea, right? Mm-hmm. For those ventures in Asia.
At which point you get down to Korea and you said cybersecurity, AI, Korea, like human resources, the probability you find two investors that match that type of a criteria are going to be
you said it, Will. It's one investor.
No, I'm just saying there is a point where you actually filter yourself out of this, which is also why we don't use like what Crunchbase or PitchBook uses, which are hard filters. We found that was wildly inefficient because what the hard filters do is it basically says, unless it matches all of these criteria, you don't get to see anybody. And you're like, dude, there's like 100 other people you should be talking to. But because you added that one criteria, you don't see it anymore, which always frustrated me.
Right. And that's why we give you all the tools and we'll work with you on this to filter things out and to figure it out. But what I like to do is start, especially if they're all over the map. This is a global problem. And I know the founder wants to basically incorporate in the United States, and companies will do this all the time. If you have a beachhead in another country and it works, they just know that automatically you can land and expand. Right away, we're starting to see how we could use this tool. It's a good call, Will, to go back into this and take a look.
Yeah, well, again, instead of just saying if you fit all of these criteria exactly, you show up or you don't, which is essentially a binary result, which is a horrible way to search for investors, and it's how almost every tool out there works. What we did instead is we said, here are all the different factors that tend to match you with investors, like location preference, stage preference, amount you're raising, which is typically within stage, obviously industries, past investments, like you name it. Then what we do, and if you go back to that screen, Ed, we apply weights and values to all of those conditions. And then we say, and if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see a score of 76% or 78% with 7,457 points. Those are all the weighted values saying, yes, there's two that match the criteria exactly, but this one actually matches it better. And I think that's so much better to be able to say, yeah, there's 50 people that match it, but talk to this person first. However, Ed, how many people are working at that firm? I think I saw 3.
I saw 3 contacts. Let's go down here. 3 contacts.
We got Paul, we got Jacqueline, and Joaquin, and Juan, let's say. Jan, maybe. Who knows? Point is, we have 3 people. However, The system will determine which one we should be talking to. Now, most of these are co-founders that they're kind of all at the same level. But why do we know which one you should be talking to? This is super important because our system, we've been collecting this data for a very long time. We can already tell you which person is most likely to respond to emails, something you'd never be able to figure out on your own, because we're the ones generating all the emails out, and so we see all the replies. Obviously, it's fully anonymized. All we see is a binary whether there was a reply or not. We're not like digging into the replies. But a couple things happen here. Let's say that Paula was the right person to contact, and apparently the system grabbed her.
Reason, Will, just to pause super quick, because this is the most verified information. Everyone, we have a team that actually go out and we verify, because a lot of times emails change and everything like that. So if we get a signal that this, in fact, they respond, they're active, everything, we will bump them up as priority.
Right. And again, just to point out, because our system helps you generate the emails, and the emails go out under your Gmail or work email or whatever you're using, but our system kind of connects to that and sends them out. Because of that, we can see the reply volume. That's how we actually show you all the reports of what's working and what's not. But we can take that data across a large subset of people out there fundraising and tell you collectively which investors were the most responsive and which were not. It's a really important data point that most people just don't have access to, and I think it's useful.
What overall would you recommend? We identified this issue of kind of converging, conflated business models, industries.
Yeah.
What would you say to this founder in terms of going back and really honing it down?
I would say you have an awesome problem. I do believe resume fraud has a meaningful impact. I think the idea of having to become a job board may be an evolution in your go-to-market strategy, but as what we're focused on, no one wants to fund another job board, right? But they'll sure as hell fund the problem of resume fraud detection. So focus on that and don't take a detour. Even if you plan on launching a job board at some point, the focus of this deck should be around solving that problem, the competitive matrix for this problem, the market size for this problem, and just stay focused there. The moment you start to veer off into another business, another category, et cetera, you weaken the strength of why you're going to get funded to begin with. You're actually diluting your value, not expanding it.
To this founder, Andy, I'm going to work with you. I got your back. So we're going to go through all this feedback. Don't worry. Got you covered. Let's answer this question, Will. Really appreciate. I'm going to sort of summarize this question, make it contextual so that everybody can understand. If you're building, let's say, an AI-powered travel assistant model and anything out there, what's the most critical metric or assumption in the go-to-market or unit economics that you should validate first for investor confidence? It's a good question.
I think as far as what's validating, show that anybody that has the willingness and ability to buy has raised their hand and said, I'm willing to buy. Now, you can do that in a lot of ways. You don't have to get to the final product where somebody bought the product. Of course, that's ideal. But in the formative stages where most of you are right now, you can get to that same validation point by running surveys, by talking to your customers directly, by doing pre-orders, by getting letters of intent. There's a million ways that you can communicate that someone is willing and able to buy before they actually give you their cash. I mean, it's literally how Kickstarter got started, right? You'd have a million people saying, I will buy the Pebble watch. This is back in the day. If you build it, right? That is the validation. They didn't have a Pebble watch yet. They were raising money to go build it. It's the same concept. Again, you can do this through surveys. You can do this through customer interviews where you interview 10 people that are exactly the kind of people that would buy this product, and you provide exactly the kind of response they get. In a pro tip for that, when you show, we interview the top 10 CTOs for whatever that would buy this, always represent what their respective buying power includes, right? So don't just say, we interviewed the CTO from Microsoft. Say, we interviewed the CTO of Microsoft who has a $3 billion discretionary budget, okay? Or if you interviewed 5 people that weren't the CTO of Microsoft, and each of them have relatively a small budget that they represent, add them all up. We interviewed 5 executives that collectively spend $65 million per year on this problem.
That is a fantastic pro tip, and I never even knew to do that until you were bringing it up. I'm like, why didn't I think of that a long time ago? But I want to point out, just to make sure I'm answering for the founder here.
Yeah.
Will, you brought that up in terms of the context of sort of like a pre-seed when you're in that early stage pitch deck. All of you founders out there, if you already have an MVP out there, what you want to do is make sure that you're testing the riskiest assumption you have. Let me give you an example. Someone says, oh, we're going to use AI to help people do better to-do lists, and it's going to be voice activated. Great. And you go out and you say, oh, everybody wants an AI to help them with their to-do list, especially if they're neurodivergent. There's an actual founder I was working with.
Yeah.
And I said, that's not your greatest risk. The risk is, will they use a voice agent? Will they actually talking to something? So
Right.
those are the metrics and understanding how that leads to unit economics, that if you have tested them, you can tell the investor. One of the assumptions we had was that voice to-do list was going to be a lot more effective. And look at our usage. We've proven that out. That'll make investors supremely happy.
One of my favorite things to do, I don't want to say to investors, maybe with investors, is have an investor say, that'll never work, and be like, cool assumption, we've already sold $10,000 worth of product, right? We had a business way back in the day, and we were selling Xboxes for $19 a week. It's essentially what a firm is today. And the investors were like, that's never going to work. No one will ever buy that. Like, yeah, we did $500,000 in sales in the first month. And it's like, oh.
Will, not to try and one up you because it's a
Yeah.
competition, but a similar story. Actually, your story is better. But we had a startup that launched right at COVID. We had
Yeah.
a launch party. I was literally sitting at the launch party at the presentation room when
Yeah.
the lockdowns happened. Nobody
Yeah.
showed up.
Yep.
And everybody said, no, we're not going to invest. This is the worst time to launch a business. I went and did a crowdfunding campaign, rewards, and I sold $45,000 in 30 days. And then I went back to them and they were like, okay. And they wrote me checks for $200K.
Yep.
So that's what you do, right?
And that's how you kicked off your young adult novelist career.
Oh, we have a lot of fun here. Will, last word to you. Thank you so much. Based on everything that we learned today, your message to all the founders out there listening to this, what's your final word of encouragement?
Just a couple things. Stay focused. Stay focused. Your goal isn't to build a pitch deck that covers every possible opportunity. Your goal is to build a pitch deck that covers the most important opportunity. Because investors look at this and say, number one, I can't understand the 20 things you're talking about. I can understand one. And of that one, that's so important. If you nail that, we can go do the others. But if you don't nail the most important thing that you do, the rest doesn't matter. So keep it simple, keep it focused.
For those of you joining us from Startups.com, thank you so much for your support. You mean a great deal for us. We would love to hear feedback. If you're out there, the greatest acknowledgement, despite the fact that we'd love to have you part of our community, share what you've learned here with someone else that could use the help. It's out there on YouTube. It's going to be there. It's free. Sharing is caring, everyone. We appreciate all of you. Will, I'm going to see you next week.